And I invite you to open your Bibles and to follow as I read James 1, verses 12 to 18, the text that I've been assigned in this series. James 1, verses 12 to 18. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial or testing. For when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him. Let no one say when he's tested like that, I'm going to argue. I'm being tempted by God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he's lured and enticed by his own desire. Then desire, when it has thus conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's fully grown, brings forth death. Do not be deceived, my brothers. Every good and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights, with whom there's no variation or shadow due to change. Of his own will, he brought us forth by the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. So in verse 12, you can see immediately that James regards the hardships and sufferings that you go through as tests. That's a pretty bold thing to say. Like, who's testing? Who's the test giver? Satan doesn't give tests. He deceives, he devours, he destroys. Nature doesn't give tests. It's mindless. God gives tests. These tests are from God. We know from James 4:15 that James believes in the absolute sovereignty of God over all life and death and over every detail of your life. It goes like this. You ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. So if it's God's will, I'll finish this message. If it's not, I won't. So the sufferings of verse 2, which we've seen earlier in the series, and verse 12 are called tests. You need to endure them. They're tests. So here's what I hear James saying as he begins this letter. I'm about to exhort you with about 6 things to do. 62 imperatives in this book in the Greek. That lifestyle, that unselfish, other-oriented, love your neighbor as yourself, sacrificial way of life, I'm telling you, is going to be required of you in the midst of lifelong miseries, which are God's tests. That's where the obedience of this book is going to be required of you. There's no vacation time to do nice obedience and then you can suffer at another time. This is the most doing of all books, right? And all that doing is be done under the cloud of suffering. And my argument is going to be that verse 12, first clause in it, blessed, makarios, deep and lasting happiness is yours if you endure the tests and are found proven. That's the point of the passage, all the way to verse 18. Everything else is argument. And there's 4 of them. 4 foundations under the statement, all God's tests are designed to make you deeply and lastingly happy. That's my translation of makarios. Blessed. Everything else in the text is to help you believe that. Live that, because life is going to be hard. Joy is going to be serious. Argument number one. So let's take them one at a time. Argument number one is the rest of verse 12. Blessed, that is deeply and lastingly happy, is the man who remains steadfast under trial or testing. Why? Because when he has stood the test, when he's been proven like gold through fire, he will receive a crown of life. That's why, which God has promised to those who love him. So reason number one, argument number one for why it is a blessed thing to walk through God's tests is that his design in those tests is your deep and lasting happiness, and these tests provide circumstances through which you are found proven and fit for the crown of life. Now, the key question is, what's being tested? I know you are being tested, but what in you is being tested? What's supposed to come out like gold? What's passing through the fire here? He does not mention faith. He does not mention hope. He mentions one thing: love for God. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life which God has promised to those who love him. So who gets the crown of life? Answer number one: those who are tested, come through the test, are found to be proven, they get the crown of life. Answer number two: those who love God. So the challenge for us is to ask, are those alternatives? Like, there are two ways to get the crown. Be tested, love God. And my answer is no, they're not alternatives. What's being tested is my love for God. If my wife dies, did I love her more? I love God more. That's what's being tested. If my health is taken away, that's what's being tested. Do I love God more or health more? If the doctor says to me, you got 6 months and you lose this life, do I love God more or this life more? That's the test. Love for God is valuing God, enjoying God, treasuring God, being satisfied in God. Is He my deepest desire? And God strips me with these tests. When He strips me of these other things that I enjoy and thank Him for so much, will He be enough? I still have what's best. I still have Him. And He's what I love most. That's the test. So the fires of affliction are designed by God to put our love for Him through the fire, the test, and bring us out on the other side with a deeper love for God. That's argument number one. All God's tests are designed for your deep and lasting happiness, makarios, because tested and proven people get a crown of life, that is eternal life. Or to say it another way, if your love for God is tested and found to be the deepest desire of your life, you get heaven. If it's not, you don't. Argument number two. Verses 13 to 15. Let no one say when he's tempted, and I said I'm going to argue for tested. I'll come back to that in a minute. Let no one say when he's tested, he's tempting me. God cannot be tempted with evil, and he doesn't do that. He himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he's lured, dragged, and enticed with bait by his own desire. Then desire, having thus conceived that kind of luring and dragging, gives birth to sin. And sin grows up, fills its life with sin, and brings forth death. So what's the main point of that unit? The main point is nobody should ever say, those tests you just referred to are designed to tempt me to sin and die. Don't ever say that. That's the point of the paragraph. Now, the challenge in the translation, as you know, and we're all BCS people because almost everybody in this room is studying Greek or has and will, and that's wonderful because then you can make up your mind here. Because the challenge for the translator is that God's testing, that word testing, and tempting are the same word in Greek. It's our call where to stop saying test and start saying tempt. That's our call. You got to make that call. You don't have any choice because he clearly shifts. Where does he shift? And I'm arguing that the most natural way to read this text is to say, blessed are you when you're tested, and don't you ever say, when you're tested, you're tempted. That's the way the text, I think, should be read. Don't ever say that these testings that everybody gets and all his children get, designed to bring them to happiness, are really designed to trip them into enticements to sin and death. Don't ever say that. So how does he make the case now for that? He starts in the middle of verse 13. God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. God can be tested. He was many times sinfully in the Old Testament. Psalm 78:41. And God does test. Same word as tempted. He doesn't tempt, he tests. This is a real challenge. James likes to do this. James is using these kind of little word connections regularly. And he makes us think. Jesus does the same kind of thing. So what's the difference between testing and tempting? What's the definition of tempting in verses 13 to 15? And I'm not asking you how you use the word temptation. That'll never work here. I'm not asking how Matthew used it. That won't work here. I'm asking how James uses it, and he does not leave us in the dark. He defines the term for us in verse 14 pretty clearly. It goes like this. Don't ever say that when you receive one of those tests from God, he's tempting me. The death of my mom is designed to make me angry and mean and hate him. That's what it's designed to do. No, it isn't. No, it isn't. Here's what tempting is. Verse 14. Each person is tempted when he's lured, literally dragged, and enticed like bait on a hook by his own desire. His own desire. Here's what I think he's doing. James is drawing a line right through the progress of desire in your life, in Jesus' life. He's drawing a line between two kinds of desire. When Jesus was tempted, using Matthew's and Luke's definition, when he was confronted with the objective desire for bread, he was moving with desire. He had fasted 40 days. Matthew 4, verse 2 says he was hungry. Hunger is a desire. And after 40 days, it's a strong desire. Over there's food, over here's my hunger. And he's moving. And here's a line. And this line says, on this side, Jesus' side is holy, good, right. It's not a sin to be hungry. Not a sin to want to eat this afternoon. And he's moving. And right here, a line exists where if you cross it, those desires become enticements and draggings and sinful allurements for what you ought not to have. That's the line. And Jesus never crossed it. He never crossed it in Gethsemane. I don't want to die. If he saw an attractive woman, he never crossed it into sinful lust. His desire moves toward an object and he doesn't cross it. So I think James is saying the line is when desire turns into being dragged and enticed by sinful pleasure. Jesus would have been doing that if he had bought Satan's suggestion that he use his messianic power to get the bread from the stone, because he would be drawing him away from his path of suffering and self-denial and starting to turn him into a self-seeking messianic king that was not yet appropriate. None of Jesus' desires ever crossed that line. Now, if I'm on the right track here in defining temptation as the crossing of that line into sinful allurements, enticements, dragging away, I gotta have it. If I'm right in that, it explains what he means in the middle of verse 13 when he says, God cannot be tempted. God is never dragged anywhere. God is never baited and allured sinfully. He's never the victim of his own passions. This is why the doctrine of impassibility or aseity matters. He is totally self-sufficient. He could never be dragged by anything coming into him from outside. When you get to verse 18, you hear, of his own will he brought us forth. And the word there is, whoa, that's what governs God. You're not jerked this way and that like we are. Got a desire for this, a desire for that. And we better not get close to the line. God's not dragged. God's not enticed. He's not looking at a bait on a hook and saying, no, I sure want to have that. This is not the kind of God he is. I think James is really high here. He's reaching up pretty weighty matters here to talk about why God cannot be tempted. So James infers, it seems, little parenthesis here, he infers that God can't tempt anyone, doesn't tempt anyone from that. I'm saying I don't understand this yet. And I suggest that one or two of you write a master's thesis on the logic of those two clauses. He cannot be tempted. He does not tempt. Help me. I'm going to believe it. I mean, he said this, he said this. I believe both of them. I'm not sure I see why one follows from the other. I could make some guesses, but not satisfied yet. So there you go. You got an assignment. If you stay on for the master's guys in the seminary, I don't know if you do theses in the college, but there you go. That's worthy of about 50 pages, maybe. So, he doesn't tempt anybody. He is saying, when anyone's desires cross this line, it does not require God to intrude himself on that. It is perfectly sufficient to explain that cross over in terms of my own desires. God does not need to intrude into that dynamic of movement in the human soul from good desire to sinful enticement. He doesn't need to intrude anything in there from outside. What's going on in your soul is perfectly sufficient to explain that crossover.